Good afternoon, George Cavaligos for HFT Bonds. Interesting day. Market started out with a bit of a bid. We came in with some long positions from early this morning, got out against the previous highs in the 10-year around that 125.19 plus 20 level initially. And at that point, I think we saw one of those interesting things that we like to talk about, the non-confirmation between the bonds and the notes. The bonds actually made a new high by a tick at that point. Got out of most of our longs there. Put a stop down below at break even on the rest. Probably should have put a short on at that point, but I thought we'd still see some kind of a bid in the market into the buyback this morning. Meanwhile, the market decided to just roll over and die and go and stop me out at that point. Later, we saw another interesting divergence on the 10-year note auction and then the FOMC minutes. The markets rebounded a bit, and we saw a rally to new highs in the 10-year to 125.23, which is an important fib retracement that I highlighted in the chat room. At the same time, the bonds were not making new highs. Signal to put some shorts on at that point. You know, I try to emphasize those confirmations between the bonds and the notes as important, and non-confirmations are important obviously too. We utilized one this morning to get out of our longs. Probably should have got into a short at that point, but didn't. A later trade, we saw the bonds not confirming a new high in the notes against an important fib retracement that did signal time to put a short on. Of course, I got out way too early, but that's okay. Now what do we see? Tomorrow's bond auction. I think the markets will be sort of choppy sideways to lower into the auction. The market saw the 10-year auction today went okay, wasn't great. 30 years a bit heftier in terms of, you know, how much it affects your portfolio if you're buying or selling bonds versus notes. So we could see a little bit more of this sideways to lower trade. We do have another buyback tomorrow. I just, don't know if it's going to be enough. Today we did get a little bounce out of it, but it wasn't that much really. So I'd be nervous about being long tomorrow into the bond auction. I want to look for a retest of the recent lows or the important fib retracements that we have between this morning's highs and last week's lows. And I'm going to highlight an important level in the bonds here. The 132.15 level is kind of a make or break area in my viewpoint from this corrective standpoint. Are we still in this corrective trade, or are we going to go make some new lows? I don't want to see much of a trade back below 132.15. We've already got, I think, a little bit more evidence pointing towards a resumption of this down move here towards new lows again, or at least a retest of the recent lows. The notes have held up quite a bit better. Bonds are actually poking below their 50% retracement of the rally from last week's lows, or from Sunday night's lows, whereas the notes haven't even touched the 38% retracement at 125.04. So I'm kind of looking at this move down as part of a bigger corrective trade, and we're going to poke around these lows, and then maybe we get back into that old trade where if you buy the bond auction, what's the figures? I want to say it's something like 32 out of 36 of the last 36 monthly bond auctions. If you bought the bond auction and sold them 24 hours, you didn't lose money. Unfortunately, the last couple bond auctions were in this massive sell-off, and boy, did you lose money if you held on to a long position for 24 hours after the bond auction on Thursday. Fridays have been the beast around this market lately. We've seen a lot of big sell-offs on Fridays, so I'm almost thinking a little bit lower, bounce, see how much we get out of the bounce. That's going to be the key. One step at a time in my view right now. Take a look at what happens overnight. I'll fire off the morning email, and then the chat room's place to be, guys. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.